sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Howdy folks, welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory and today is Tuesday, June the 14th, 2016, and I have the very distinct honor of welcoming back to the show Mr. Brandon Smith, and you can find all of his work over at alt-market.com, and you'll not only find all of his great analysis, but you'll find articles on preparedness, and as well as a map that will put you in contact with like-minded people in your area. Not all areas are covered, but a vast network is available at your fingertips. Welcome to the show, Brandon.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show.
Well, I'm certainly glad that you're here. We've got the FOMC meeting coming up tomorrow and want to kind of touch on your latest article and get your thoughts and analysis of what to look for, not only tomorrow, but in the future as well. And I know that you pay very close attention to what these criminals share with us through meeting minutes and various public records. And in my opinion, this puts you in the same league as someone like John Titus from Best Evidence, that's a very high compliment. And your latest article, Federal Reserve Strange Behavior Makes Perfect Sense, sets the stage for the next interest rate hike. And I want to read this from the article and then get your comments. And it states, as I wrote in my article, the global economic reset has begun. The Fed has a habit of doing exactly what it says it is going to do. They may fool the public as far as the exact timing of policy changes, but they never back away from the policy changes themselves. I cannot find a single instance in the history of the central bank in which they announced future measures and then didn't eventually follow through within the year. And then you go on to say, Fed officials today have been adamant that at least 2 more rate hikes will be initiated in 2016. And what role does the coming interest rate hike play in what you have described? And will the next interest rate rise come tomorrow on Wednesday, the 15th, or will it be 2 back-to-back towards year's end?
Well, as far as the timing of the next rate hike, first of all, I do believe that there will be another rate hike, mainly because of the history of the Fed's rate hike programs and the fact that they have a real tendency to raise rates into recessionary situations. So, if you look at the Great Depression, as that recession moved forward, the Fed hiked rates about 2 years in, and then turned that recession into, what many would say, turn that recession into a depression. And I believe that's entirely deliberate, that they have a habit of raising rates into recessions in order to create greater crises, in order to consolidate more control over certain elements of the economy. And this situation that we're in this year, going into 2017, I think is another, maybe slightly different or maybe entirely different from the Depression, but as far as the situation with the Fed, it's very similar. We're seeing a lot of recessionary data coming in. The jobs numbers, even the official manipulated jobs numbers, are looking pretty dismal now. Manufacturing, exports, pretty much every element of the global economy that you would look at for fundamentals as far as the health of the economy is going negative. So it would be a perfect time for the Fed to raise rates if they wanted to create a crisis, just like they did back during the Great Depression.
Because they have a habit of doing the exact wrong thing at the exact wrong time. So,
absolutely.
That is their history.
I can't think of a better time the reason I believe that they'll hike rates soon, I'm basing that theory on their history of creating crisis rather than trying to protect Americans from crisis. And I would say that this time, right now, June, maybe July, is a perfect time. It's perfect cover for them to increase the amount of chaos in the economy to trigger renewed crisis, mainly because of the Brexit, or the vote by the UK to leave the EU. This is important because if the vote to leave the EU goes through, there's a lot of concerns about market volatility surrounding that. I think that the Brexit would act as perfect cover for an economic downturn that was going to happen anyway. So you have all these elements of recessionary elements in the fundamentals of the economy. Then you have the Fed, who's hiked rates already once and is adding to that volatility. And then you have the Brexit, which is sort of this wild card or potential black swan event that everything could be blamed on. So if the people of the UK vote, or if that, vote for a Brexit, or if the vote is rigged and there's a Brexit, everything can be blamed, at least for a while, on the Brexit situation. They can say the Brexit was the catalyst for the greater downturn, that everything was relatively stable until the Brexit occurred, when in reality it was the central banks had been preparing for a crash for months, if not years, in advance.
And outside of the Brexit creating that scenario, how do you see, or how does the collapse of the dollar play out? I mean, is it going to be like a thief in the night, or does it continue for another 5, 10, 15 years? And what does your analysis tell you about an end date? Has that been revealed through the magazine article published by The Economist stating that 2018 would be the year of the new global currency? I mean, do you think that that's what is in play right now, or what is your analysis telling you, Brandon?
I think equities or a stock market crisis would be a lead-in to much greater crisis, including a collapse of the dollar, or the loss of the dollar's world reserve status, which would lead to a collapse of the dollar. However, I think that the dollar's world reserve status and its value is much more directly dependent on what happens with Saudi Arabia in the next year or so. What we've seen from Saudi Arabia is a rapid shift to balance out their dependency on oil and oil exports with other, financial elements and other financial projects. And then there's also the issue of the 9/11 accusations and the secret 28-page 9/11 report, which supposedly implicates the Saudi Arabian government in aiding and abetting the terrorists involved in 9/11. That could all be a smokescreen too, just to provide a rationale for the Saudis to depeg from the dollar and the dollar peg to oil and kill the dollar. But really, Saudi Arabia is will be the primary trigger for a crisis in the dollar.
And they're actually moving a lot closer to Russia and China as well. Or are they not?
Yes. I think China is now the primary or the largest buyer of Saudi oil. It just recently shifted over. It was the U.S. and now it's China. So, there's not as much incentive for the Saudis again, I think most of this is kabuki theater. It's pre-staged. There is no conflict between the Saudis and the U.S. government. It's all kabuki theater in order to bring down the dollar and then introduce the new SDR-based or basket-based global currency that the economists talked about in the 1980s. They predicted would happen by 2018. But the rationale that they give to the public will be that there's this considerable conflict between Saudi Arabia and the United States, who were once, had unbreakable ties. What a tragedy! Now the dollar's dying. We need a new system due to the unexpected consequences of this black swan event, and it's all theater, but it's very clever. It's a very clever narrative that they're putting together.
Well, and with that, I mean, with China and Russia seemingly on a daily basis putting more pieces of the puzzle in their shift from Western financial and economic systems to their own de-dollarized system, and the yuan was just recently made another step on the international stage. I mean, how does this fit with everything that you just said?
Well, Russia and China, I think, are meant to. They're not meant to. They're meant to survive the global downturn, while the U.S. is meant to move further into third world status. And the elites, every time they create or engineer these market crashes or economic downturns, they need somewhere to transfer their wealth in order to protect it during those times of crisis. They allow everyone else's wealth to be destroyed while they maintain theirs in a safe space somewhere. And I believe China and Russia will be the regions in which they park a lot of their wealth. And people have to remember that especially today, wealth is incredibly liquid. The elites are not invested in the survival of the United States in any way. They're not invested in the survival of any country in particular. They have no loyalties to any particular nation. They have loyalties to themselves and their agenda, and their wealth can be moved anywhere at any time, and they'll be able to move it well ahead of any kind of market crash. So this idea that we keep seeing this argument that, well, the elites would never kill the golden goose. The U.S. is the golden goose. That's complete nonsense. The golden goose is their wealth holdings, and they can move those anywhere they want. Russia and China would be, I think, a good place for them to park their wealth during a crash of the U.S.
Do you not think that we're going to see ICBMs or, quote, limited nuclear strikes, end quote, between the East and West, primarily United States, UK, Russia, and China?
I don't really see a nuclear war as necessary to their agenda. It's always possible if they thought that they were going to lose complete control over the economic situation, that they might just go for broke and trigger a war and then try to build from the ashes, maybe. I would say, as far as their population, their depopulation agendas, which are they're openly admit to in all kinds of mainstream interviews. If that's the goal, then starvation is their best weapon. So again, an economic downturn can be used to fill that goal. Also, with an economic downturn, they can steam valve how quickly things crash, and I think in their minds control the eventual outcome by locking down, certain portions of the population, instituting greater martial law controls, so on and so forth. They don't have to they don't need it to go completely Mad Max. In fact, I think if it went completely Mad Max, it would actually work against their agenda, because then there's too many wild cards, there's too many unknowns in that kind of event for them to control. So I doubt that nuclear war is their end game. I think economic collapse would fulfill most of their goals.
So you think that what we're witnessing in Venezuela today, you see that on a much larger scale and affecting a greater number of areas of the globe?
I think every measure that the Venezuelan government is taking right now to lock down the population, control and ration out resources, that's exactly what you're going to see in most of the world, including the United States, in the near future.
Because that is, in my opinion, that's about one step away from a Mad Max world. In all honesty,
exactly,
I mean,
and it's it's what it becomes is an apocalypse for the general population, but the elites maintain a certain amount of government. They maintain military. They start instituting surveillance controls, rationing controls. The ration cards in Venezuela are completely digitized. That's a system that we've been warning about in terms of martial law for the United States, but you can see it implemented right now in Venezuela. That's coming here.
well, all I can say is everybody get ready. So, and then last question, Brandon, and you had mentioned the SDR, and back in October, the yuan was included in the SDR basket. And as everyone knows who's paying attention, all of the audience that's listening to this anyway, or most of them, are well aware that China and Russia both have been gathering more or acquiring more gold than anybody else on the planet. And that's month over month. That's their central banks. And what role will gold play in the coming years, according to your analysis? I mean, will China and or Russia either back their own respective currencies with gold, or will China utilize the SDR basket and unfold some gold-backed SDR, or what role do you see gold playing?
Well, it's hard in the near term, it's hard to say. If the Fed hikes rates tomorrow or in July, which I could be entirely wrong. Maybe they're done. Maybe they're one and done, and they're not going to do it again. But if they do, as I suspect they will, then you could see an initial drop in gold prices, just because the assumption in the markets will be that the dollar will become stronger due to the rate hike. I think that will be short term, and the crisis that erupts through either a Fed rate hike or a Brexit will outweigh market assumptions of a dollar increase, and gold will begin to decouple from the dollar's perceived value. At that point, gold will start to skyrocket because it'll be a safe haven. Everybody will be looking for a safe haven. As we've seen recently, gold has been spiking quite a bit, and it's been one of the most solid investments for 2016 so far. So in the near term, I would say you could see a drop if the Fed hikes rates, with a spike later down the road, maybe 4 to 6 weeks down the road. In the long term, I think that either China or Russia or both, will initiate some kind of coupling of gold to their currencies. And I think that the IMF will encourage this because their goal, I believe, is to bring gold into the SDR basket, either vicariously by including China in the SDR, and then China links the yuan to gold, then by extension the SDR is linked to gold, or they'll just directly add gold into the SDR basket. And they'll do this because as the dollar begins to crash after it loses its world reserve status, there needs to be some kind of tangible backing for the new system so they can sell it to the public. Hey, we're not just producing another fiat money system, some worthless paper system. Look, we have gold backing this one. So you should back this basket currency in order to save the world from a dollar crash. And I believe that's how they'll sell it to the public. So gold, I think, will be fundamental. It'll be vital. And that is the reason why elites like George Soros are now dumping all kinds of money into gold and gold mining stocks.
Yep. And he's not alone. I mean, you've got Drunken Miller and Ray Dalio doing the same thing. And these are some of the wealthiest investors anywhere. I mean, love them, hate them. It's not important. Look at what they're doing. Look at what they're doing with their money. And we should all be gathering up or acquiring some gold, acquiring some silver, and storing it away, because something's going to happen. I mean, everything is too out of balance at this point. I mean, something has to give. And as you've mentioned martial law on a number of occasions, and Hank Paulson in 2008 said that if we don't save the banks, then there would be martial law instituted, and that there would be, quote, tanks in the street. I mean, I can't even imagine tanks in the street in our society. It just is. It's just too
right,
much.
And people should really pay more attention to what the globalists actually say in their white papers and their press statements, because they tell you what's going to happen.
Yes.
The Bank of International Settlements in 2007 warned of a credit-based crash, which then happened in 2008. The IMF and the Bank for International Settlements have been warning since 2015 that there would be a crash coming. And they've warned about the Brexit. They've warned about rate hikes. They've warned about several things. And they're almost always right. So, and they're right not because they have a crystal ball, but because they're creating the crisis.
Right.
So watch carefully what they say and the warnings they give. Also look at what the elites invest in. George Soros, the last time he shorted the market this much, and the last time he poured this much money into metals, was in 2007, right before the 2008 crash. So you got to look at what they're doing. You got to look at what they say. There's too many people just ignoring what the globalists say and kind of applying their own bias to the situation. And I think you do look at what they say, because almost always they do what they say they do what they say they're going to do, and their investments are always right on the money because they know that a crash is coming.
Well, when you write the script, I mean, it's pretty easy to know the outcome,
Exactly.
I mean, and they're the ones, like you said, they're the ones that are engineering everything. So, of course, they know exactly what's going to happen. Now, their timelines may move around and shift here and shift there for whatever reason. But, I mean, you have to listen to what they're saying. Are they known liars? Absolutely. Are they known thieves? Absolutely. But they are. I've heard it said on a number of occasions by a number of people that they consider it to be in poor taste to not tell you what's getting ready to happen. and they're not going to do that because then they can sit back and say, well, we told you we were getting ready to steal everything. We told you the system was getting ready to crash. You didn't listen, so good luck with that.
Right, and it provides them an alibi. They can say later, well, we're not the bad guys. We tried to warn all of you. You wouldn't listen, and look what happened.
Exactly.
And also it sort of turns them into these their image. It turns their image into one of being prognosticators. Oh, look, see, we predicted this would happen. Are you going to listen to us now? We have a solution, right?
Yes.
So people say, oh, well, they warned us. They knew what was coming. Maybe these guys are a lot smarter than us. Maybe we should listen to them now that they're offering a solution to the problem. Of course, they created the problem so that they could offer that's the solution that they wanted. But, in the public mind, a lot of people may not realize that.
Exactly. And that's why it's important to have people on my show like yourself, Brandon, so that we can reiterate the fact that they are telling you what they're going to do. So, but I certainly appreciate all your time today, Brandon, and I'm going to have you back on sometime in the very near future so that we can keep track of what they are saying so that we have a better idea of how to position ourselves, if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
And we've been speaking with Brandon Smith, and you can find all his great analysis. I consider him to be the contrarian to the contrarians, and all of his work is over at alt-market.com. Brandon, certainly appreciate all your time and all your knowledge.
Oh, thanks for having me on the show.
Well, we will speak with you soon, my friend.
All right. Thank you very much.